Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
So I found it really funny tonight. Courtney and I were logging on at 8:30 to record. And so I was like a couple minutes early, but like not enough early to be like, oh hey, like I'm early. So I'm like, I'll just sit here and scroll TikTok. And then it like pops up and it's like, Courtney's active now. Do you want to say hi? And I was like, are we both just sitting at our computer scrolling TikTok, waiting
I
until
was,
8:30?
I was, in fact.
Oh, so yes, that I got a little chuckle out of that. I was like, nope, we'll just sit here and scroll our TikToks for 4 minutes and then we will
Yeah.
chat.
Well, because I know it sends you a notification when I enter the Zoom,
Yeah.
and so I never want you to be rushing and be
Like, oh no,
like,
I gotta get in now.
you're already barely gonna make it by 8:30, and then you're like, this bitch logged on at 8:25. So I'm always like, wait till
Oh
like
gosh.
8:29. It's like when I do it at my work too. I'm like, I'm
Yes.
not logging on early. 8:29 and 45 seconds, I will be logging on.
If you log in too early, then you got to make small talk with the meeting host, and I don't want to do that.
No.
I will log in like right as we're about to get started. I'll say good morning, but I don't need to
Mm-mm.
chat about the weather and everything else that, you know.
Yeah, speaking of weather, hopefully we make it through this episode.
Yeah,
Because we
true.
have some pretty bad weather supposed to come our way. It's been kind of quiet for now, but that also sucks because it's the time when everyone is trying to go to sleep. And if bad
Yep.
weather happens, that's kind of scary. But
Yeah.
I know Ohio, Kentucky, West Tennessee have gotten hit pretty hard. So yeah, rough.
Yes. Hopefully it won't end up being too bad, and hopefully everyone in all of those places that have already been impacted, hopefully all of those people are okay. But we
Hmm.
are coming up on that time of year, so
Yeah. It wasn't too long ago that how many years ago was it? 13 years ago on your birthday? Those horrible tornadoes. Do you remember that?
Yes, I was trying to remember how old I am to see how old
I know it was
because
2011.
yes, it was my 18th birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was like some record for like the number of tornadoes that touched down in like the country in like a 24-hour period, and that was
Hmm.
like I think the last like actual tornado we had like through
And
here.
yeah.
Because Courtney and I live like in the valley, so we usually don't get the tornadoes that like come around the area because the mountains kind of protect us. But yeah, it was terrifying. Like it
Yeah,
was so
we were
scary.
driving home from your birthday dinner and it
Yeah.
was like hailing. And then we stopped at this Taco Bell. And then Tiffany was like, you know what? We just need to get in the car and get home. And thank God we
Hmm.
did because the tornado touched down at that Taco Bell.
At that Taco Bell that we were just at. Yeah. And
Yeah.
like I just remember driving down the road and you literally couldn't even see where the road was because there was so much like debris in the road. I'm
And
like, I
winds.
don't know if I'm in the road or someone's yard or like what is happening.
And we were like, we might just have to start knocking on doors, being like, please let
Yeah.
us in.
It was so
Like,
scary.
then we got to your house and your power was out, and you're like, all right, guys, we're going to my Nana's house. And me and Tiffany went, we're not moving.
Granted,
No.
it's less than a mile away, so I wasn't trying to
Yeah,
go
it
too
wasn't
far,
far,
but
but after that last drive,
you're
we
like,
were like,
we're sitting still.
we're good. We're
Yeah,
good right
yeah.
here.
And we ate a cookie cake in the hallway with my dog, and it was a lovely, it was a birthday to be remembered, that's for sure. None of us ever forgot that.
That's true. Maybe if I think about it, I'll try to find the pictures we took from hunkering
Yes.
down in your hall and
Oh
post
my
them.
gosh. That was
Um,
too funny.
yeah, but yeah, just crazy, crazy
Yeah,
time.
because I remember I was supposed to have a big birthday party, and then I couldn't have it because I didn't have power for a week. So I ended up just not having a party. Like,
Yeah.
because it was just me, you, and Tiffany that day. And we like went to dinner with my family and I got my first tattoo and all that fun stuff. But yeah, like we're supposed to have like an actual like party that weekend and then we didn't have power for I think it was like 10 days. So it was like, yeah, we're
Yeah.
just we're just not gonna do that anymore
I'm not
and
gonna worry
never
about that.
rescheduled it. By that point, it's like, yeah, it's past. It's not.
I forgot you're even supposed to have a party.
Yeah,
So
because it was supposed to be an ABC party, which is anything but clothes, where you like make an outfit out of something that's
um,
not clothing. So you
gotcha.
can use
This is
like a
coming back
twister
to me.
dress or like a trash bag or, like curtains, what, to make something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is coming back to me now that you
Yes.
said that.
Yes. I like a themed party, makes sense why I had a themed party for my 30th because I couldn't do it for my 18th. So I was like, we'll just
You had
push
to
that out 12 years.
make up for lost time. Yeah, crazy, crazy.
Yeah. Well, I guess I haven't seen any updates. I've been kind of
Oh, we do have an update.
Oh, just kidding.
Alec Murdoch was sentenced to what, 40 years in prison, federal prison for his money laundering stuff.
Nope, missed that. No idea. Tell me about it.
That's about all I
Oh,
know is
okay.
that
That's
I
it.
think it was the money laundering aspect of it.
Uh-huh.
So he was sentenced to 40 years for that. So I think I could be wrong, but it just seemed like because he's trying to appeal like his murder charges that they're like, you're gonna be in here no matter what.
Yeah, they're like, we'll get you on the other stuff, so don't even waste the taxpayer dollars going through these appeals because you're
Yeah.
going to be here no matter what, so does it really matter? Unless someone
Yeah.
else murdered them, and then I guess it does matter because we want that person to be held
That's
accountable.
true, but if you already have these other charges and you're gonna be in prison for those,
Yeah,
doesn't matter if you're innocent on that front or not, I guess. But
true,
um,
true.
I honestly didn't look too much further into it, but I just saw that kind of headline
Mm,
pop up. So
gotcha.
that's about it. That's about all I saw.
Okay, all right. Well, let's just jump on in then.
So our sources for today is a episode of Cold Case Files called DNA Speaks, Season 1, Episode 3, Horror in the Dark, a KPIC article, and an article from The Oregonian. So teenagers Lliana Adank and Eric Goldstrand were brutally murdered at Broken Bowl Campground in Willamette National Forest near Eugene, Oregon in 1977, and their murders would remain unsolved for 44 years. So Eric Goldstrand loved to play football and had a beautiful smile. He loved his friends and was always happy and goofing around. His friend Todd remembered that he was always wanting to go off on adventures and was never mean or angry. He was a happy teenager, always smiling, bouncing around his high school. And Lliana Adank was outgoing, enjoyed sports and athletics and music. She also loved riding horses with her friends and cousin. And her friend Bonnie described her as spunky, bubbly, full of life, and that friend that always had your back. So Liana and Eric met in junior high school and started dating when she was 16 and he was almost 17. And they were crazy about each other, and everyone said they made each other happy. And Eric's mom, Donna, said she just loved them together. So I think you like all remember that couple from your high school where you're like, they're just so sweet and so perfect
Yeah.
together.
And I think it's so special too when like the parents love them, because
Yeah.
I feel like so many times it's like, oh, well, like the parents disapproved, but like they were crazy about each other, blah, blah, blah. But then
Yeah.
when you're like, oh no, like the mom loved the girlfriend and like loved them together. Like
Hmm.
it's just so sweet and wholesome.
Yeah. So they both attended North Eugene High School in Eugene, Oregon. And on June 9th, 1977, Eric and Liana tried to get some friends to skip school with them and go up to the Willamette National Forest to picnic and fish. Their other friends said they had skipped too much school already and couldn't go, so the couple went alone. And Eric drove an old Ford truck that was always breaking down. And when the couple didn't return home by their curfews that night, their families were worried. But Eric's mom, thought, his truck had probably broken down somewhere. Like, as we said, like it was common to break down. So she's like, oh, they just need help somewhere. So she and her husband Ted went driving around for them at around 10:30 p.m. and finally they spotted his truck parked in the parking lot of Broken Bowl Campground, and it was the only vehicle there and the area was pitch black so they couldn't really see much, and inside the car they could see their belongings but not their swimsuits or fishing poles. So they assumed they'd been out fishing and swimming and hadn't returned. So they called their names and looked around for them, but it was just so dark. They called the sheriff's office and waited. They were like, "We can't see anything. We're not prepared to look for this. Like, we just need help
Hmm.
here."
Yeah, like the way she described it, she's like, it's literally like you couldn't see like your hand in front of your face. Like there were no
Yeah.
outside lights. Like there was nothing. It was like you're in the middle of like this forest and it's pitch black.
Yeah. And the deputy arrived about 2:30 a.m. and he thought Eric and Liana were probably just lost, but his mom knew Eric was very familiar with those woods and likely wouldn't get lost in them. She knew something much worse had happened to them, and because it was so dark, it was hard for even the police to look around with their flashlights. 100 feet from Eric's truck, they discovered a woman's body on the ground by the picnic table. She was nude with her arms up by her head, and police discreetly told Eric's stepfather what they had found and asked him to take Eric's mother home. And he waited until they got home to tell her they had found Liana's body. Police decided to secure the area and leave the body where it was because it was so dark and they didn't want to destroy any evidence. And detectives showed up around sunrise to start investigating. At this point, they weren't sure if Eric is another victim or if he was Liana's murderer and was on the run. So they're like, are we looking to save this guy, to arrest this guy, to find this guy?
Yeah, because like you have these two teenagers that, just go alone to this park together and then she's found dead and he's nowhere to be found. So it's like, did something happen to him or is he what happened to her? Like they don't really know what they're working
Hmm.
with at that point.
Yeah. When they can more closely examine Liana, they find her swimsuit is off and lying next to her, and there are waddled up towels nearby. She had been shot, and because of the scene, they believe she had been sexually assaulted as well. At 6:20 a.m., an evidence technician finds Eric's body approximately 25 feet away from Liana's. He was in the brushes next to a fallen tree and had been shot as well, and detectives searched the area, started helicopter surveillance, and put up roadblocks.
Which I feel like that speaks to how completely dark it must have been out there that he was only
Hmm.
25 feet from her and like
Yeah,
wasn't
no one could
immediately
see it.
found. Yeah. But also,
Yeah.
I mean, thank goodness that it was that dark because if not, like his mom would have been the one who found him, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, even so that like they could tell she was nude, but couldn't even really see like her swimsuit next to her and the towel. Like,
Mm-hmm.
obviously once they find her, they're like, we're not touching this until we can see, but like still must have been so dark not to see anything.
Yeah.
So police went to Eric's house, and his mom said she knew Eric was dead as soon as she saw the police car drive up. The autopsies were done at Sacred Heart Hospital. Liana had 3 gunshot wounds to the chest, forehead, and left temple by a 22 caliber revolver. There was also seminal fluid on her body, confirming that she had been sexually assaulted. Eric had a gunshot wound to the chest from a distance and had also been shot in the head. The families held a double funeral for Eric and Liana, and there were at least 500 to 600 people in attendance, which is a lot of people. And by
Yeah.
August, the search for the killer stalled. Then the sheriff's office received a tip that a man had been at Broken Bowl with his friends looking for fishing holes the day of the murders and had seen a couple skinny dipping. He made sexually explicit comments to his friends about what he would do to the girl, and the man was also known to have several firearms. He was contacted by police on August 18th and said the young couple he watched skinny dipping had bicycles with them, but Eric and Liana didn't have any bicycles. And the suspect had brushes with the law before, but detectives couldn't find any evidence to connect him to Eric and Liana. So, like, yeah, he kind of made gross comments that he shouldn't have made, but nothing more like nefarious with this situation than that.
Yeah.
Another strong suspect in the investigation was Dwayne Little. He had been arrested as a teenager in 1964 and was convicted in 1966 for the rape and murder of a young woman. And he was paroled in 1974, which, if you're doing that math real quick, is only 8 years
Yeah. For
for rape
rape
and
and
murder.
murder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The 60s, man,
I know, because it's
rough.
like I would expect that for like just rape in the 60s, but for rape and murder, I would think it would at least be a little longer, but
You have to wait a
mm,
little bit before you can get paroled.
yeah.
um, but don't worry, he wasn't good for very long. He was
Yeah.
arrested again in 1975, only a year later, for possession of a firearm by a felon. He was paroled in 1977, so he spent as much time for possession of a firearm by a felon, not as much, but a fourth of it.
Close. Yeah.
Close. And was living in Portland at the time of Eric and Liana's murder. Police considered him a strong suspect, but he was confirmed to be working a swing shift in Portland on June 9th, so it wouldn't have been possible for him to travel the 1.5 to 2 hours to Broken Bowl to murder Eric and Liana. In the early days of the investigation, Eric's mom didn't think it would be possible for someone to get away with such heinous murders. But after years with no movement on the case, she started to realize someone might never be held responsible for their murders. Like, there are no leads, like, this person could possibly just get away.
Which it was so sad because in like the documentary when she was interviewed, she's like, I literally thought like, okay, well, there's no way someone can get away with like this brutal of a murder.
Hmm.
And she's like, and then years and years went by, and then she was like, oh no, like they might just get away with it. Like just
Yeah.
that she didn't even think it was a possibility for something so horrific that someone could just not get caught. And then she realized that that wasn't the case. And that's just so heartbreaking.
Yeah, it really is. And many suspects were interviewed and polygraphed, and ballistics testings were done on several weapons, but detectives still had no strong leads.
In 1995, almost 20 years after the murders, DNA was emerging, so detectives looked at the evidence that had been collected from the murders. So the two towels left near Liana's body had seminal fluid, and there was also seminal fluid left on her body as well. And they were able to run the DNA and get the profile of a man. So his DNA was put into CODIS, but there was no match. But obviously, like this DNA database was very limited at the time because it was so new. So you don't have a lot of people to compare it to, but they do have a profile if they find the suspect.
Yeah, because it wasn't until like in the 2010s, I think, that they started being like anyone charged with a felony like gets put
Yeah,
into CODIS and stuff. So yeah, it's like not what CODIS is today.
exactly. In 2014, Detective Rogers was assigned Eric and Liana's case, so it was now 37 years old. And again, no credible leads. Like they had a few, in the 70s and the 80s, and then it just kind of nothing was coming of it. So Detective Rogers started wondering if their killer could have been a serial killer who had been active in that area in the 70s. So he starts looking around at like other similar murders. So then he got a tip from a cold case detective from the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office in Northern California. So a man named Thor Christensen was a serial killer in the 70s and would pick up hitchhiking women, drive them to rural areas, and shoot them with a 22 caliber revolver. He would then rape their bodies, and they knew he murdered at least 3 women this way, and that he had been in Eugene, Oregon in 1977. So they're like, okay, this is looking pretty, things are lining up here.
Things are lining up for sure. Yeah.
Um, the thing was, he wasn't known for killing other men, so like it was kind of unusual that Eric would have been murdered. But they're like, well, maybe he like killed and assaulted Liana like when she was alone, and then Eric appeared, so then he had to murder him too. So like maybe he didn't realize that someone else was there.
Yeah, like maybe she went up to the car to get something. It
Hmm.
happens. Eric comes to look for her,
Yeah.
stumbles upon it.
So on June 6, 2018, the DNA from the crime scene was sent to a genetic analysis company called Parabon for phenotyping, which would help create a sketch of the suspect. So the sketch that was created was almost identical to Thor Christensen. Like they did a side by side and it was wild. Um, but Christensen had been sentenced to life in prison in 1980 and was stabbed to death 6 months later. So they weren't able to access his DNA to confirm that he was their murderer. But because he had been stabbed, they're like, okay, well, maybe we can get a hold of like whatever makeshift knife was used to kill him. Like maybe it has his blood on it and like we can use that
Hmm.
to get his DNA. But the knife was either thrown out or lost from evidence. Like the prison just didn't have it.
Yeah, I mean, sounds like pretty open and shut who did it. So it's like,
Yeah.
why would
They're
you
like,
leave
yeah, we
it?
don't need
Why'd you
this.
keep it?
So they did ask his family members to submit DNA, but no one would agree to it. However, pretty soon after this whole, investigation into Christensen started, his brother passed away, and the medical examiner was able to get a blood sample, which I wonder about the legality of, because I'm like, don't you still have to consent to
Yeah.
something like that? Or your next of kin who have all denied submitting their DNA to this point? They didn't really
You
expand
know
on
what
how
this
that was
makes me think
possible.
of
Mm.
is like BTK and how they got like the DNA from his daughter, like at the
Yeah.
OBGYN. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah,
And that was like how they connected it, where like
true.
she also didn't know. So it's like, is there some loophole? But I feel like that's like
Yeah,
HIPAA. Like you're not, yeah. But
yeah.
that's the first thing that I thought of was how, because that would have been that was a when was BTK caught? The 80s? 90s?
No, he wasn't caught until like 2004,
Okay.
2005, something like that. It was definitely the 2000s.
So I mean, still like 10 years, but I mean still happening apparently.
Yeah, but like
So
this was 2018. Like that was
yeah,
like
that's
not that
you'd
long
think after
ago.
that they would have been like, whoop,
Yeah,
whoop.
so I don't know, and maybe there's more to it. Like they didn't really
Yeah.
go into it, but like maybe somewhere he consented to something that there was like a loophole,
Yeah.
and I don't know. So at this point, the detectives in Oregon are positive that they had the right guy. So they're like, we were just sitting there, like waiting for the results to come back, like confirm it was him. However, on January 24th, 2019, the results came back and they were not a match. So Thor Christensen did not murder Eric and Liana. So just
Wow.
like back to
Crazy how it
square
like
one.
all kind of lines up
Yeah.
and then
And
nope.
like the sketch was so similar and but I mean it
Yeah.
just shows like how easily you can like be on the path of the wrong person, you know, and like
Hmm.
so focused on like oh like which of course this is kind of different because it's like almost 40 years later. It's not like they're like
Hmm.
right after and they're not looking at all these leads, but they're so focused on like oh yep, it was this guy and it was not. So again, this was 2018. So at this time, news of the Golden State Killer being caught by genetic genealogy was everywhere. So detectives are like, okay, maybe we could do that. So they submitted the DNA sample to Parabon again for genetic genealogy. So the initial results were very distant relatives and like didn't really help them out at all. But then they were able to connect to another family tree website and then use that DNA to narrow down the likely source to one of three brothers in the Shoy family. So they were from Oak Ridge, Oregon, which was near Broken Bowl. One brother still lived in Eugene, and the other two brothers lived in Mesa, Arizona. So they started tailing the brother in town first and set up surveillance. And when he threw a cigarette butt out his car window, detectives stopped and got it and tested the DNA. So it wasn't a match, but it did confirm the suspect was a close relative. So, like, okay, we know it wasn't this brother, but we got the right set of brothers now. So they compared the phenotype sketch to the other two brothers, and it appeared to be like a mix of them. Like there were features of like both brothers in this sketch.
Hmm.
However, the younger brother was in the Navy at the time of the homicide, so it couldn't have been him. So the last brother, Ronald Troy, had lived in Eugene at the time of the murders and had prior assaults for sexual assault in Colorado. He had also been arrested a few years before for assaulting his brother. So Oregon detectives contacted the Mesa Police Department to do some surveillance work for them to try to obtain discarded DNA like they did from the brother in Eugene. But this proved to be difficult because the brothers lived in a gated community and rarely left their home. So like don't really have a chance to like get anything if they're
Hmm.
not out and about.
Yeah.
But then on February 24th, 2021, Oregon detectives received a call from the Mesa Police Department that there had been a shooting at the Shroy household. So when they arrived, the younger brother had a bloody and swollen face, and they found Ronald Troy in bed with a gunshot wound to the head. The medical examiner did determine that it was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. So it seems that the brothers got into some kind of physical altercation, and then Ronald went into the bedroom and died by suicide.
Hmm.
So they were able to obtain DNA from Ronald after his death, and it did come back positive as a match in the DNA and the seminal fluid that was left on Liana's body. So Oregon detectives went to Arizona to interview the younger brother Daniel. He said that Ronald like always wanted to be dominant. He was just a very abusive person in general. He also said his quote sexual appetites were out of line, which is one way to put it, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
and when he was asked if he knew anything about the murders of Eric and Liana, Daniel said he didn't know anything about them, like his brother had never spoken about them. They then told Daniel that Ronald's DNA was a match to the seminal fluid left on Liana's body and that, they're pretty certain at this point that he was the one who murdered them.
Hmm.
They did show the interview in the episode, and it was very sad because, like, you see them interviewing this guy, and he, like, truly has no idea that, like, he knows his brother's not a great guy, but he has no idea that, like, he's done
The
this, and he's
extent of it. Yeah.
yeah, and he's like, "Wow, like I'm just so sorry. Like I'm so embarrassed for my family." And they're like, "You don't have anything to be he's apologizing. They're like, "You don't have anything to be sorry for. Like you didn't do this." But he's just very apologetic when he finds out.
And it's again too of like how hard it is for like these horrible people's families, how you're like,
Yeah,
yeah, I knew my brother was like kind of a piece of shit, but I never expected him to be a murderer. Like
exactly.
that's hard, especially like right after his brother dies by suicide and then you
Yeah.
find that out and you're just like, oof, that's
Yeah.
a lot to unpack.
Especially this brother that you have lived with for like over a decade. Like they've
Hmm.
lived in the same house together. Like they're very
Yeah, because
close,
then
you
you're like
know?
questioning everything. You're like, who is this person?
Yeah. So Daniel said he did remember one time they were watching TV and a commercial for Ancestry DNA came on, and Daniel mentioned that he would like to do something like that, and Ronald got very upset and told him that he shouldn't do that and kind of like stormed off. They both also watched a lot of true crime shows, so detectives were wondering if Ronald like knew he would be caught soon through genealogy DNA because again, the Golden State Killer was all over the news. Everyone knew like how they had come
Mm-hmm.
to find this guy and like he knows like his DNA was left at the scene,
Yeah.
and someday that might come around to,
Haunt him, I
yeah.
guess. I don't
I
know.
was like, what's that's what I was gonna say. I was like, I don't know if that's the best, but yeah, I mean that's
Yeah, come back and bite him in the ass, I guess.
yeah. So Ronald Troy was 23 years old in 1977 and did live in Lane County, Oregon, and he moved to Mesa, Arizona with his brother in 2008. So on September 13th, 2021, Eric Goldstrand and Lliana Adank's families finally learned that their murders had been solved after 44 years. Like
44 years. And they would have been like in their late 50s if they lived, because 16,
yeah, yeah,
44,
because they were
50.
16.
Coming up like on 60. Sorry, not 50,
Yeah.
60. Like they could have had a life and they could have gotten married, had a family if they wanted. They
Mm-hmm.
could reasonably have grandchildren at that point if they wanted.
Yeah.
Like they could have lived this whole life in
Mm-hmm.
those 44 years and like that's how long it took just to solve their murder.
That's what, because Eric's mom was interviewed on the episode and she was like pretty much exactly what you said. She's like, I always wonder, like, would they have stayed together? Would they have gotten married? Would they have had children and had this whole
Hmm.
family that now we'll never know. And so now the families know like who killed them, but unfortunately they'll never know like why or any details leading up to their death, what they went through. They'll never have the chance to like confront the killer. Like you have part of the puzzle, but you still don't know what happened to them, you know?
And like I guess we don't know of any other crimes like this he committed necessarily. So it's like,
Yeah.
again, not being like a serial killer, it not being someone with like a serial history of crime. I mean, obviously, people said he wasn't a great person, but like
Hmm.
not like constantly in jail or prison for stuff. Like
Yeah.
it
Like he
is
did
being
have the
like,
prior
why?
sexual assault in Colorado, but not like
Hmm.
a double murder. Like that's a
Yeah, not like a double murder, not like
yeah.
in for like I'm sorry, the first guy we thought it was, what was his name again?
Thor Christensen.
Yeah, like him, where you're like, okay, that makes sense. Like he has a
Yeah.
history of doing this. He's in prison. Like this guy got to live his entire life.
Yep.
And it's also just like, it's like, why? Like, what made you want to do this at
Hmm.
all? So,
Exactly. It's like it just has to be
yeah,
so hard for the families to like at least you now know who, but again, you'll still never have the rest of those
yeah.
answers. Liana's cousin Kathy was interviewed on the cold case episode, and she also posted to a local Facebook group asking people to consider donating to cold case units to process DNA in other cold cases like Eric and Liana's, because we know that funding for cold cases is very minimal. So she had linked to
Hmm.
like this specific sheriff's department, but look at your local sheriff and police departments and see if their cold case units take donations for processing DNA because it is very expensive. And especially in these cases that are decades old, like they're just using resources for more current cases.
Hmm.
So any donations that can go to cold case units can be very helpful. And as always, please consider uploading your DNA to ancestry databases to assist with genealogy DNA investigations because they are leading to many rapists and murderers being caught decades after their crimes. So we have all of these crimes that were committed in the 70s and 80s before they knew to be aware of DNA that now we are finally starting to be able to identify them through genetic DNA databases. So if that is something that
Hmm.
you are comfortable doing, you know, please consider it.
Yeah, and I wanted to make sure I got the name right before I said it. Another place for kind of a cold case that you could donate to if like your local one doesn't have one is in the backlog, which is
Yes.
funding to help in the backlog of rape kits that have not been
Yes.
tested. So I think you can donate there. I think it's just in the backlog. I just Googled in the backlog, first thing that comes up, but
Hmm.
something similar, these rape kits, DNA out there that's just been sitting that could again, open a case like this up. Like you
Hmm.
connect one, you could connect a lot, like things like
Exactly.
that.
Yeah, I mean, there could be many more that this guy did commit and just never got away with. And this is the one that had detectives who stayed on it after all these years
Yeah.
and had families who were persistent enough and were able to get testing done that, yeah, maybe, if they tested other evidence that they have, he could be responsible for those too. And
Hmm.
it's just sitting there and has never been tested.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those are the horrific murders of Liana Edink and Eric Goldstrand.
So sad. They were so young. So
Yeah.
young.
And like their
They were
pictures, like obviously we'll
babies.
we'll post them, but they're just so like quintessential 70s. Like just like the like
Yeah.
they have the same haircut. Like it's adorable.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. And they should be able to look back at those photos and be like, "Ah, look at
exactly.
us, not what happened to them." So,
Yeah. And I do wonder too, like how their friends who weren't able to like skip school with them, like how they feel because they're like, oh, like what if we had a group of like 10 of us there? Like would it have been the same
yeah.
situation, you know? And
Or would we also be dead?
exactly, like you
Like
never
it's,
know. I mean,
yeah, so much with that.
yeah, just super sad case. That being said, sorry for the awkward
I know.
transition. Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is I mentioned on the last episode we released, it was coming out on me and Kevin's anniversary. So we ended up having a wonderful day. We went to Zool and got some abridged burgers because that's just,
The best. Love
and
it.
especially too because there was no one there. It's like they took extra
Mm.
time on it. Like that burger was he was a thick boy. He was a
So you're telling
thick
me I
boy.
need to take a random day off during the week to go to Zola and get some abridged.
Yeah, just go get lunch. Just go grab
Yes.
lunch really quick. No, but
Perfect.
and it was like a rainy day too. So I think
Hmm.
that like a lot of people probably weren't like coming to Zool on their lunch break
Yeah.
and stuff. But so good. And then we went and did Top Golf because at our local one, it's half price on Tuesdays. So we went and did
Nice.
that. And it was actually a lot of fun. I wasn't really sure what to expect, but
Hmm.
it was a lot of fun. And then we had dinner well, we also drove by our venue because I always love to do that
Oh.
like day of to be like,
Hmm.
let's just go back there and look at it. It's kind of far out there, but we had some time. So I was like, let's just
Yeah.
go look and like say hi.
Yeah. We
Like,
do that sometimes too. Like when we're in the area, we
yeah.
always, make sure and give it a little wave.
A little wave. Um, and then we had a Jopo for dinner, which is just
Oh, the best. Oh my gosh.
so good. Such good
Hmm.
pizza. It's like our little um I usually always go there for my birthday or
Hmm.
just special occasion because I mean you could probably have not so expensive dinner there, but they have really good wine on tap. So then once you get that involved, you're spending $100.
And you got to get the
Like
gelato too, because I
you gotta
mean,
get the gelato. Yeah.
obviously, yeah,
Yeah, it
yum.
was it was so good. It was just such a nice day. And then I think I'm pretty sure we came home and watched a movie. I think that was the same day. I don't know. It was kind of a long day, so it's all kind of
Sounds
meshing in my brain. But
like
it
the
was
perfect
just,
little anniversary
yeah,
date.
it was nice. We usually take a trip, but we have quite a few trips coming up. So we're like,
Hmm.
wanted to save some money. So it was nice to just have like a random day off during the week because like we
Yeah,
never take days off during the week and just spend some time together and, relax. So
very nice.
it was nice. Yeah, but that is my perk of the week. Jacqueline, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week, so my two almost 3-year-old somehow daughter has been asking me for months to paint her nails too. So in her Easter basket, I got her first bottle of nail polish and it was purple and sparkly and adorable. And of course
Hmm.
she was just so excited and she wanted to paint her nails right
Hmm.
away. So we painted her nails and she sat so still. Like I was so proud of her because I was like, this is gonna be a mess. But she sat so still and was just like, you know, she was there for it. The only problem was she like kept wanting to look at it, so she's like sticking her face directly in it, and I was like, I kind of also need to be able to see it so I can paint it. Um,
Yeah.
so
I'm
yeah,
gonna
so
get paint
we
in your hair here, girly.
exactly, especially with that bright blonde hair. I'm like, we all go see that purple streak.
Yeah.
So got her nails all painted, and then my nails are also purple right now, which I intentionally did before I gave her nail polish, so we would match. And then of course she wanted Andrew to match, so he painted his pinky nail, so he has a purple sparkly pinky nail. And
I
then
also have purple. You'll have to tell her.
I know. I'll show her a picture. And So that was Easter. So then we like went over to the grandparents' house and everything. And so of course she had to show everybody her purple nails. And I know this is a podcast, so you guys can't see me, but she was like, "Look at my nails, look at my nails," and would just hold up
And
the
just show
palms of her
palm.
hands. And we're like, "Millie, you have to put your fingers down so they can see." Because she's like, "Look, look," and they're like, "What am I looking at?" Like, "Millie, put your hand down." And so then she's like, then she finally does that. And then she's like, "And my thumbs too." Every single time she points out that it's her fingernails and her thumbs. So it's
And
just
her
really
thumbs.
cute. And of course, it's almost all completely off now because she's, a rough and tumble almost 3-year old. And,
Yeah.
so I'm sure we'll have to repaint them soon and get more colors so she can pick out what color she wants. But she is loving having her painted fingernails that she's
Yes.
been asking for. And it was delightful to see her just
You'll have
so
to send me the
excited.
brand you got so I can look at their other colors. I'm just
Yes.
constantly collecting birthday ideas over
Yes.
here.
Always. So yeah, that was my perk of the week. Let us know, what you guys do on your anniversary dates. Let us know what color are your nails also purple right now? Because I know like 4 people whose nails are purple, probably because of Easter. Makes sense. We're all doing our light purple
It's
spring.
spring.
Exactly. Let us know all the things. Let us know your thoughts on this case. Have you uploaded your DNA? Do you want a link to donate to any of these organizations we talked about? Just chat with us. We'd love to hear
Hmm.
from you guys. You guys know where to find us on all the things that's in the show notes. And most importantly, we are also on patreon.com/caffeinated crimes if you want all kinds of bonus episodes, if you want to chat with us in Discord, if you want to let us know your episode ideas, if you want a pin and a sticker so you can show everyone that you support caffeinated crimes, all that good stuff over there.
Yeah. And if you wouldn't mind to please give us a 5 stars on Apple, Spotify, like, subscribe on YouTube, leave a nice comment, anything like that, that would be greatly appreciated. But in the meantime, go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.